Alright, 10 flight, 6 until 1090.
I think one of the things that we always talk about in the art of policing, if you will, is that sometimes context matters. And if I don't give you everything, then you really can't form a full opinion about the subject that you want to know about. The idea behind this podcast is that we try and look at issues that maybe are complex and try and make them understandable, but also give you the whole picture of what's being discussed. This is our opportunity here at the Walton County Sheriff's Office to answer questions about things that matter to our citizens here in Walton County, Florida, but really are bigger than that, about things that happen nationwide.
You're listening to The Art of Policing with Walton County Sheriff Michael Adkinson.
Hello, this is Sheriff Mike Adkinson, and welcome to The Art of Policing. This will be episode 4, and we're going to be discussing swatting and bomb threats. So this is a relatively new phenomenon that we are seeing in law enforcement throughout the country, this term swatting. Now let's talk about what that is for just a second, because it's getting a lot of attention nationwide, and I think most people don't know what that is. And truthfully, it encompasses a couple of things. Swatting is when someone calls into a public safety communication center and basically makes the allegation that an emergency situation exists that would require a SWAT, air quotes, SWAT type response. In other words, a heavily armed response because someone or some people at the residence are an imminent threat to the safety of either the community or someone in the residence. So, ergo, you're going to have a SWAT response. You need men and women armed with a tactical response.
Before Sheriff Adkinson explains swatting from a public standpoint, take a quick listen to what the tail end of one of these calls may sound like through radio traffic.
0221 Walton. We've got the front door open. Going to go ahead and clear it. Everything appears 10-4. Believe it to be false alarm.
2-8 Walton, I did speak with the Congressman direct. He is safe. He is not at this location in Florida at this time.
You know, believe it or not, while this has happened on occasion in the past, it was not to the level that we see nowadays. We're seeing a lot of these calls. You're starting to hear about it nationwide, but that is the gist of what swatting is. It is designed to elicit a response. It is designed to make a law enforcement entity, a police department, a sheriff's office, a federal agency, whatever situation, to respond with a heavy armed response.
Sheriff, do you feel like these are becoming more prevalent just because of the access of ease of information and data on people?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think one of the things that we see is, you know, from the safety of your home in Oregon or California or Florida or wherever, you can locate or find someone pretty easily. And, you know, then you can cause, elicit this response. And kind of my take, it breaks down into two variables. One, it is this need for attention, and a lot of times you'll see famous people being swatted. I think over, Christmas of 23, there were something like 2,500 swatting calls that went out in the span of about 72 hours. What's interesting, and, Allie will know this as well, we had, U.S. representatives and U.S. senators swatted in our county. That same day, all Florida senators received swatting calls. There was also swatting calls in Maine for elected officials.
So are politicians the primary target?
I think politicians and people of some level of notoriety. We've seen it in this county, here in Walton County. We've seen it with professional gamers. We've seen it with elected officials. We've seen it with musicians. I mean, you'll see this type of thing really with anyone that has a level of notoriety. So if I can get some attention and elicit this response, and it's easy for me to find your address. It's not that hard. I think that's one level of people. I think we're seeing that. The other swatting personality, if you will, that I'm seeing, and this is certainly not technical, is I have an axe to grind. I went to this high school and someone was mean to me. I failed out of this high school. I got in trouble here. This business did not treat me the way I thought it should treat me. I don't like my neighbor. Another very common one, quite frankly. I'm jealous of your success. You rejected me on a date. All of these are things. But they're really, I kind of bifurcate it into two things. There are people who are trying to elicit a response for a thrill or to influence behavior. Let's just say you're whatever, pick your terms. You're a left-wing liberal, right-wing conservative. It doesn't matter. But I am, as a swatter, I'm on the other side of it. I want to cause you problems. So I target you for that. And we were talking before we started this podcast that there's a little bit of a terroristic bent to that. In other words, if you don't think like I think, if you don't do what I want you to do, then I'm going to cause you this problem, swatting.
What's the second part of that?
Yeah, and the second part of that is you hurt me in some way, shape, or form. You have wronged me. That's person two. You have wronged me, and this is my way to get back to you. The last few swatting cases we dealt with here that we were able to identify ended up being a couple of them were younger kids, 16, 17 years old that had problems at the school previously. So for whatever reason, they called back and swatted local high schools.
I think you've kind of explained a bit what it's like, but can you kind of break it down a little further? Kind of explain maybe what type of call somebody might call in on a person or someone or a politician. What would elicit that type of response? Can you give an example?
Yeah, I think Allie, it's a great question because I think people say, well, how do you decide whether or not to send an armed SWAT team? Right. So a lot of these are called in as there is a man with a gun in the house. Mm-hmm. He's threatening to shoot his wife. He's despondent. He has already fired the weapon. So
something of such significant magnitude that would cause that sort of response to
right. Something of, to your point, a significant threat that you have to respond, that it would not be, not only is it not prudent not to respond, but failure to at least respond would be, really malfeasance on our part or misfeasance.
And we're going to send, when there's something like that, we're going to send multiple units, a lot of resources, because we're presuming that it's an actual.
Yeah, and so you would say, I guess, to our listeners, you would say, well, why do you presume it's that it's real? Shouldn't you just go out there and check it out first? Sure. Well, the answer is maybe. A lot of that depends on how it's called in, what's the nature of the call. Let me give you an example. So if you call in and you give a very detailed explanation with personal knowledge of what's going on in the house, and it makes, it's believable, for lack of a better way of putting it, we have to give that a heightened level of interest. If you call in and you can't really tell us who lives in the house, what's anything around the house, you have no real personal knowledge beyond who lives there, that's going to slow us down a little bit. We're going to go, okay, wait a minute, this doesn't sound quite right.
And to Corey's point, when they do have all of that information, they've got addresses, they've got, gate information or whatever the case may be, then it makes it more believable.
Yeah. And the delivery matters too. The way they call it in, sometimes they don't sound real from the jump.
Right.
The ones that are the most believable, unfortunately, are people that have an axe to grind. In other words, they know you. They would know the layout of the local high school. They know teachers in the school, right? Mm-hmm. They know the name of specific students. Well, that becomes more problematic because you're giving me more detail and more information.
So let's talk about the dangerous part of that, right? Yeah. Why are swatting calls dangerous to not only law enforcement but really to the public at large?
So let me give you an example, because what's going to happen is anytime you have an armed response and a police officer, a deputy sheriff, a trooper, whoever shows up at your door, remember, as a homeowner, you have the right to protect your home. You certainly don't know that these calls are coming in, and the potential for confusion, the potential for misidentification is huge. So you could have a homeowner maybe that has a firearm, and they see a police officer peeking through their window, whatever the situation may be. You can immediately see where you have two sets of armed individuals that do not know the other's intent, that you got a problem. You got a real concern there. But I do want to reassure the public about something real quick. I mean, we don't go and kick in the doors because we get a swatting call somewhere. So the response is not necessarily, again, that we're going to run up in there and kick the doors down. That would be exceedingly rare. There would have to be all kinds of stuff going on that would add to that, right? But we're still going to we have to respond. In just about any jurisdiction in the United States, if you call and request a police professional, they're going to come. They don't say, "Oh no, this is a ridiculous call, we're not going to go." Someone is going to come. Now, it may not be the SWAT team to start with. It may be one or two deputies, and and they are able to dispel what's going on. So back in, I guess, probably November of this last year, we had a couple of different swatting calls in the same day. And one of the things we understand with swatting is we don't roll the SWAT team out every time. So again, it takes a long time to get a SWAT team rolled up. However, in our county, and really in most jurisdictions, it's going to take a long time to get a SWAT team rolled out. Long time relative for us, not necessarily relative for you. However, the deputies and police officers are going to be able to respond immediately, and they are at a heightened level of awareness. They are on a red, high level of caution. They're going to come out. They're going to be out with guns out. 100%. They're going to be guns unholstered, guns out, because they can't be wrong. They can't be wrong. So, that is the most common immediate response to swatting. And that's what happened with us in, back in November, which is we had a couple of SWAT calls that were fairly believable. So the deputies responded, multiple deputies responded, and they were able to dispel that this wasn't accurate or wasn't a threat pretty quickly. However, people saw the deputies responding, and they saw deputies with guns out.
And that's alarming, and especially in our county, where we are a pretty safe county for all intents and purposes.
I think it's alarming anywhere, right?
Yeah,
it's alarming
for sure, for sure, and especially in a place where you're not really expecting it.
So the balance, and we have this discussion, Corey and Allie and I talk about this in the past. One of the things that happens with swatting is these folks want attention. They want to see that their actions elicited a response. They want to be in the news. They want to be in the news. They want the attention. It's attention currency. It's the same people that are internet trolls. It's the same people that create fake profiles and always have got a whistleblower complaint, or they're a citizen awareness group, or they're an activist or whatever. But they don't put their name on it, right?
They want their 15 minutes.
They want their 15 minutes of fame. So our position has always been not to glorify it, because that is giving them what they want. So if we do a big press release of we responded to a swatting incident, they get what they want. They got the attention they want.
Well, and they want to take up resources.
And so for us, we've made the decision to not advertise false swatting calls. But here's the flip side of that, and here is the challenge for your local entities. Everybody's got a cell phone now. And everybody wants instantaneous information. So when they see a deputy sheriff going to a call like they did, say, last November, many times we have citizens taking pictures of the deputies and then immediately, instead of calling the sheriff's office, immediate posting it online, going, "What's going on? What's happened? I saw, it might be 2 deputies, but I saw 10 deputies with guns out, or I saw deputies with guns out. What's going on?" And they ask the community. They don't ask us. They ask the community. And so we're in a real tough situation, which is where we are trying to balance not glamorizing and giving them what they want, but also making sure our public's informed. And so what we have kind of the policy we've come to at this organization is if people see you responding to this swatting call, and we're assuming it's not legitimate, if you know that you are seen responding, ergo the public might have an incident, we're going to put something generic out, and that's just, we're not going to say swatting or false call. We're just going to say there was nothing to the incident. Now, we also understand the public says, why are their guns out? Unfortunately, that's the business we're in, and we have to maintain the safety of the public and my deputies when they respond. So guns are going to be out. That's acceptable tactic in that response. But we just don't want to glamorize it. I said that one day we had two. They're becoming really popular to do at schools. You see that a lot where people are calling these into schools.
Even sending fake emails, and making threats.
And it's a big response, right? I mean, a school gets even a bigger response. Why does a school get a bigger response than a house? Well, there are more potential victims there, right? There's so many exits. There are points of entry. There are so many people there. So when one of these are called into a school, it may take 10 or 15 deputies just to make sure that it's not a false call. Well, you can imagine the amount of resources that are involved in that. And the amount of people, then parents are scared.
And you're getting these email threats to districts.
To whole districts.
And it's not even specific enough to a school sometimes.
Sometimes they may say the Walton County School District, the Okaloosa County School District, the Willamette School District, whatever. That makes it extremely difficult. But to fail to respond is a dereliction of duty. We have to go and check it out. We also want the parents not to worry, but at the same time know something is going on. So there's a real balance here.
Were you surprised when we had these two incidents in November, how many people did not realize what swatting was?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's one of the things, there is no specific crime of swatting, right?
Yeah.
There's no, and one of the things that makes it difficult to prosecute, to investigate. Allie did some research on this, and I think Allie, touch on some of the things that you found about how there is not a specific charge. And
that's what I was going to ask you about that too. On the state level, federal level, there isn't a specific charge for swatting. So that makes it a bit difficult when it comes to sentencing and when it comes to, I guess, consistency a little bit for charging these people. You've got to find almost like you have to find a charge that's fitting for
Absolutely.
it. And it's also challenging too because there isn't a law enforcement agency that's keeping data or keeping track of these incidences.
And sometimes they're called different things.
And sometimes they're called different things.
So the last, I know that I spoke with the sheriff in Seminole County, and they had an individual that had swatted like 2,000 notable individuals. He did it basically at one time, right?
I mean, think about the manpower.
Sure, and he's in California. And then we just arrested a kid that was in...
the swatter was in California.
The one here recently was in Putnam County, Florida. So, there's multiple jurisdictions. All this stuff takes time, and you've got to make sure that you're right, And so that's what makes it so difficult. But we have to balance not glamorizing these folks. Because if they see that they can get this response, then why not do it? It's hard to catch them. It's difficult. They're enticed to do it, right? A little bit similar to what we talked about the second part of this, which is bomb threats. They're really in that same vein. We get bomb threats pretty regularly. I think between the swatting calls and the bomb threat calls, we're averaging about 50 a year.
Do you think that number would alarm the general? Do you think it's alarming for the general public who doesn't have really knowledge of this on a day-to-day basis?
Sure, I think it would alarm them, but I think the other thing that we have to be careful about is that I think many would say just don't go. But the difference between the swatting call and the bomb threat call can be life or death.
Yeah, we absolutely cannot not respond to it.
You have to respond.
We have to
and
respond
so listen,
to
in
it.
the last week, we had a bombing call. Guess what? It was a live bomb.
Right, exactly.
It was a live bomb.
Exactly.
And we have picked up multiple, people said, well, how often is a live bomb? How often do you get a bomb? I can think of about 10 off the top of my head during my time in office. So that's about one every year and a half you have a live bomb. Well, the question is, how many times do I get to be wrong? How many times do I say, nope, we're not going to close the courthouse today. We're not going to close the school today. We're not going to close the bank today. We had one in the Rosemary Beach area where it was a disgruntled guest from Atlanta. And so they go back home. The son decides to call in a bomb threat at a local restaurant there. That's incredibly disruptive to a business. That and they got the attention of, oh, look, I shut that restaurant down. I shut the street down. And again, I can understand the public saying, well, don't respond or don't respond like that. The problem is we do on occasion 5-line bombs, and that's true of every jurisdiction.
Which is why we have bomb teams.
Yeah, well, you have bomb teams. We simply do not have the ability to walk those off. And I can tell you, I know two of the bombs, the two bombs in particular, actually three off the top of my head, that people picked up and handled because they said, oh, that's not a real bomb. That doesn't happen. The one we recently had, somebody took it home with them, right? The one before that, we actually had a deputy pick one up because, oh, that's not a real bomb. Walk it into our station. It was a real bomb. So these things do happen, and we find people that have made bombs for different reasons.
Do you think that in terms of the people doing the swatting, you talked about two different categories. One is, they've got an axe to grind, they're familiar, and then the other, which is they're an extremist. They're looking to terrorize. Which one are easier to make charges on? Which ones are easier to track?
So unfortunately, the easier to track are the ones that have a personal connection, that you feel like you've been wronged. It's hard when it's by a cause, right? The definition of terrorism is literally to influence or to intimidate for social, political, or religious ideology to alter behavior. That's the definition, right? It's always aggressive and often violent. That is a textbook thing. That is more difficult if your cause is you are pro-abortion, you're anti-abortion, you are you're a sovereign citizen who believes that the government shouldn't apply to you. I mean, those things are very difficult because there's no particular reason for you to pick our institution, our location. You may pick an institution, but our location is not really. It can be random, which makes it very difficult to prosecute. If you're mad, one of the bomb threats we get pretty regularly is, I've got a court appearance today. I don't want to go to court. I don't want to go to school. The bank is going to foreclose my home. I owe money, X, Y, Z. Those are pretty common things that we get. And again, people will say, well, don't close the courthouse down. Don't close the business down. We try to not completely shut a place down unless the evidence is so credible that we have to close the building down. Now, we're always going to do the search. Sometimes we have to call in dog teams and we have to call bomb threats, based on what we're told. Each situation is different, But can you imagine if we shut the courthouse down every time somebody called in the bomb threat for a day or for the 6 hours it would take to thoroughly search that place? So we're in a real challenge here. I guess I would say this to the public. To the best of your ability, just understand that we're doing what we think is in your best interest to best protect you, but also balance you being able to go on with your daily lives, right? I told somebody the other day, I said, just because you don't know something doesn't mean it's a secret. And it doesn't mean it's a conspiracy. We're trying to balance and make sure that you get the right information so that you are aware, you saw deputies out with guns, or why was the school closed for a period of time, or the courthouse, or this business. We're going to tell you that. But we're not going to glamorize it because it's not in anyone's best interest to glamorize that. And, so in a county like ours, it happens once a week pretty much. About every, what did we figure the other day? About every week, every 4.1 days, 4.2 days, we're getting one of these types of calls. And each one gets a little bit different response based on the level of credibility of the caller. But all of them get a response. All of them get a response because that's what we are here to do.
What's the future look like with this? Like what are I know obviously this is getting more popular, more prominent.
Yeah.
And what's the response going to look like? Like, what are we trying to do as public safety agencies? Because this is affecting everybody.
Well, and also to consider too, as technology and AI continues to gain traction and continues to develop the way that it does.
Yeah. So we're always behind, right? I mean, the technology has put us behind on this, but I see some willingness now to use the same, Allie, to the same point, to use the same kind of AI and other predictors to be more proactive, to eliminate much more quickly which are credible and which are not.
Maybe starting it with the call itself, possibly in the future.
How the call comes in, the ability to track it a little bit faster, the ability to jump through multiple phone systems. Most of these, and I think, Allie, you said this earlier, most of these do not come through 911, right? Right. So most of these come through administrative lines. So that tells us something immediately, about the location of the caller, potentially. 911 is going to put us in a certain jurisdiction. It's going to allow us to track back a whole lot quicker. That's why they don't use 911.
Right.
So there are a series of metrics that we're going to use to determine whether or not what response is appropriate. And I think that, I've had some meetings with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement here in Florida. And I know some of our federal entities with Homeland Security. And we're talking about this because it's a real actionable problem. I mean, people have lost their life over this. Coming in somebody's house, the wrong house. We have it is being used as a tactic against people, and we have to figure out how to fight this new type of crime. The other thing is, it's not harmless. I think it's an important thing for us to say. It is not. Swatting or bomb threats are not harmless. They cost a whole bunch of money. They tie up time and resources. And the truth of the matter is, you're sitting at your mom's basement because you're a loser in life, and this gives you a sense of power. You're going to do it until there's a consequence that stops you from doing it, and that's where we need to be. We need to help provide an enhanced ability to locate these individuals and to prosecute them, and it needs to leave a mark. The prosecution needs to leave a mark, because right now I think there's this sense of anonymity, right? That I'm not going to get caught, and nothing's going to happen if I am get caught. So I just think you're starting to see us as professionals to try and search out new strategies. So I guess I would leave you with this. I would leave our listeners with this. Reacting to swatting, right, is a managed approach by your whatever entity in your jurisdiction, and to the best of our abilities, nobody's going to roll up in there kicking down doors. They are going to respond, and they're going to respond with a level of caution and awareness. And we are going to give you as much information as we can without exacerbating the problem. And I think if you start, we're really big on currency of trust here. We believe that's important. But if you start with a currency of trust of knowing that if something is important and you need to know it, we're going to get that out there. We're going to get that out there.
And that's culture. That's building a culture.
That's building a culture. And you can't do that during the time of the incident. You have to build that before. But we think that this is the best approach to handling these kind of things, because we cannot allow our citizens to be, terrorized, for lack of a better way, to alter their lifestyle by people that are doing it for their own malicious reasons, right? So we're balancing the functioning of what we're doing with your safety and your awareness and education. So when you hear those terms, swatting, maybe now you have a little bit of better understanding of what that is, and also how that relates with bomb threats and how we manage bomb threats. We hope that you have found this informational. And if there's some follow-up questions you have, feel free to email us here at the Art of Policing. And we look forward to being back in a couple of weeks with another episode. Thank you to Deputy Allie Lytle and our Public Information Officer and Public Affairs Coordinator, Corey DeBritton. Thank you.